On this episode, we talk about relative strength
and curveballs and changeups.
Porcio, Bob Wheatley here, and Scott is over there sleeping. At the @Top Velocity hashtag Pitch Tips Show.
Don't get up. Don't get up.
Go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat @Top Velocity hashtag Pitch Tips hashtag Baseball Tips, where you ask your question, you answer on the show. Hey, at least when you watch the show, you're the only one who know what we're talking about. Sorry, we got Scott over here sleeping. We woke him up to do the show. He sleeps before his little travel team practice. All right, so nothing big going on. Got Bob Wheatley here for a couple more days or weeks. No, you leave when
next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Getting rid of
him. And yep, he's out. And then it's really boring around here. Like I said, it'd be awesome if I could come out there and see you guys. Like to go see David. Like to go see you. This year it'd be fun to go to Florida and see some spring training in Florida this year. Last year I was in Arizona, so yeah, that'd be cool. So everybody's excited. Season's getting started. And we're still answering questions. So what's the next question? El Caballete asks, what's the best way to increase relative strength? Okay, so relative strength is basically what we talk about, strength to weight ratio. It's based on your weight. Absolute strength is just overall force. So bigger relative strength means you have a high maximum to body weight. Basically what I'm going to just talk about is strength best developed in our program, squatting. So front squatting, back squatting, we can build a lot of strength because we're hitting prime movers, big body, big muscles, and we have a chance to really gain a lot of strength in those areas, in those big movers. You're going to have a better time building strength to weight ratio there than you are in, say, your rotator cuff or your forearm. So that's what we typically focus on, big on squats. So our squat variations are, like we said, back squat, front squat, overhead squat if we work that in, typically later in the programs. Also too, we load up to 1 rep max on those. We don't go higher than 8 reps usually. I think 8's our maximum. Do we even do 8? Maybe we should do 6. I forgot. Now I'm forgetting. We're somewhere around 8 to 6 on those, and we bring those in about at least 2 times a week. With Bob, when we did more of the hatch system with him at the end here, we brought in pretty much legs, even though, if you're front squatting and you're clean jerks, right. We were doing legs 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't be something till you've progressed specifically to our lower levels. You can get into that kind of, frequency in your lower body or your leg lifts. So that's, to me, the best exercise in building strength is going to be in your squatting. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much covered it. When you're talking about strength, if you want to get stronger, you got to ask your body to do more. So what does that mean? That means putting more loads on your body, whether it's squatting the bar, benching, whatever. If you're just doing body weight and your body says, okay, this is all I need to do. This is all I need to prepare to do. If all you do is jump and you think doing box jumps your whole life is going to get you stronger and all that, it's not going to have the same effect as asking your body to be as explosive but with more weight on it.
Yeah, that's just pretty that simple.
You're asking your body to do more. It's like, why does Superman come to Earth and then all of a sudden he has superpowers? Well, because he was on Krypton. He was subject to higher gravity. That's how the story goes. So then he comes to Earth. There's less gravity. Then all of a sudden he can fly, he can jump, he can do all this stuff. It's the same thing. If you squat, you put 300 pounds on your back and you squat it, you're obviously training your body to do more. All of a sudden you throw the weight off, it shows your body, and then you can jump higher, you can run faster. It's the same idea.
Yeah, you can activate more motor units. So relative strength has to do with volume of growth in the muscle and also motor unit activity. But when we go into power, when we do things within a time interval, a short interval, then we can typically try to activate more motor units, which typically can build more maturity, more strength in the muscle, not exactly volume. And that's the coolest thing about taking relative strength into power training with Olympic lifting is, there's a very difference between, if you ever watched that video of Olympic squatting to power squatting or powerlifting squats, it's hilarious to show the difference, because typically when you go down the road of just building, say, strength in your lower body, more like a power lifter, just purely on strength, mass equals to size or strength. So you get bigger, you get stronger. Olympic lifting, because it goes more down the road of power, even though strength is a big part of that, but it equals that in power, then what you typically do is, because you're activating more neurologically, you are increasing strength with not always increasing size, and that's what creates relative strength or relative power. That's why, because when you look at Olympic lifting, when they say, this guy cleaned, 450 pounds, and he was, a 165 pound weight class doing it. So they're always comparing where the numbers or the lifts are always based on how much he weighed in doing that. And powerlifting doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. I don't know much about powerlifting, but I know all that matters is how much you can squat, how much you can bench, how much you could deadlift. Doesn't really matter about your weight. I'm sure there's weight classes too, but in Olympic lifting, there's studies have shown it's the only form of lifting to where size and mass doesn't correlate to strength.
That's why the weight classes in the Olympics is so important. When a guy is 160 pounds and he can clean and jerk 450, that's a lot more impressive than, say, a 250 pound guy cleaning the same amount of weight. And that's relative power. And that's why in Brent's program, he's so big on the power to weight ratio. So I clean 275 pounds. Now imagine if I was 150 pounds, that'd be unreal. I'd be moving incredibly fast, even faster than I am now. That's why the power to weight, in the case of this question, the strength to weight or the relative strength is so important.
Yeah, and because you're going to see guys that have higher power to weight ratios or relative power, it translates better to field movements, and that's what studies show as well with Olympic lifting, because that's typically where you have higher power to weight ratios. So, for example, if you're trying to take your gains in the weight room and apply it to your explosive stride or your explosive jump or your explosive run, studies show higher power to weights, Olympic lifting, that help do that are better places or better forms of lifting to translate to the field. So in understanding relative strength, understand relative power, and understand how that is essential really to your ability to perform at a high rate of speed explosively on a baseball field. So that's the transition, and that's how we try to get it into the skill itself. But it's a good question. Hope we give you a good answer. Let's go to another question here. NCJ716 asks, do you think the circle change has become the better pitch to throw rather than the curveball, given the success it has seen? I like the changeup because, breaking balls, I think it's so much easier to stay in your fastball mechanics with a changeup, because typically it's just not finishing your pitch. A lot of changeups don't allow the wrist to activate. It's holding the wrist back and not allowing the wrist to snap through, whatever you want to call it. But you still think fastball. You're like fastball the whole way. You should be doing the same thing on every pitch, but typically you find guys with curveballs start to try to change, I would say every guy, but the wrong approach would be taking curveballs and trying to change your mechanics to better break off the curveball or whatever. And I think it's more common to find that than with changeup. So I always favor the changeup strictly in the fact that it blends better with the fastball, and it creates really what's harder for the hitter, I believe, is change in timing, change in speed. So it really does the best at fooling and deceiving the hitter with what's the hardest thing to do is adjust to changes in speed. And like I said, and it supports the fastball a lot better. So I like it a lot better. Also, too, if you throw a curveball, even though studies show curveball doesn't mean you're going to hurt your arm, or you're throwing a curveball at a young age didn't correlate to arm injury. But I've experienced it with in my career throwing curveball incorrectly and had a lot of elbow problems, where I had many cortisone shots and bone spurs in my elbows. So because of my history with it, I definitely would rather see kids throw change-ups, and I just think they're better pitches if you can throw them really well with a fastball.
I'm going to try to answer your question, but with that being said, I don't think there's there's one correct answer. So I'm going to give you both sides, because I throw 4 pitches, but I throw a curveball and a changeup. So I know how both pitches work. I will say that is there a better pitch between the two? Well, it all depends. I mean, everything depends. It depends on what hitter you're facing, the pitches that you've thrown before. I will say, as a left-handed pitcher, I will have more success throwing my curveball to left-handed batters because it goes away from them. I'll have more success throwing my changeup typically to right-handed batters because as I pronate it, it runs away from them. So as they're finishing their swing, whether you're left or right-handed, those pitches, whatever pitch I'm throwing, goes away from that bat. Now, some guys have, made careers out of both pitchers, whether it's a Trevor Hoffman changeup or, Kershaw, Barry Zito has a great curveball. I will say, if you ask professional hitters, and especially the hitting coaches that I've been around, they all say that the hardest pitch to hit is a good changeup because they say that the worst pitchers to face are the guys that have a good fastball where they can put it where they want and then a good changeup off of that pitch because they look exactly the same. If your fastball, you see this wrist angle and then a slider and a curveball, the changeup is right off of that. So it's hard to pick up. It's essentially a fastball that doesn't get there, so they're out in front. So I'm just kind of giving you, we're pitchers trying to figure out how to pitch, but it's also valuable to listen to the hitters and say, hey, what are you looking for? What's the hardest thing to hit and why? And I can tell you that if you have a good changeup, hitters hate it because all they want to do is sit on a fastball and get their fastball because you can hit it harder. I mean, their whole life, whether it's front toss or BP or live hitting in a game, all they do is they train to hit a fastball. Rarely will guys be sitting in the cage just hitting curveball and curveball after curveball because, unless you're at the higher levels working on a specific pitch, you're trained your whole life. You're just hitting a fastball. So a changeup off of that pitch, it's really frustrating for them, and that's what I've heard from pro hitters.
Yeah, that's good advice. I don't know. I mean, there's many different ways you can throw changeup. You can throw changeup for movement. So I think you get more variety out of the changeup than with the curveball. Typically, a curveball is just going to do this. Changeup, you can get it just to change speeds, but you can also get it to move. So I think there's a lot of variety there. I threw a Foch changeup, which was pretty much like a split finger changeup. So there's a lot of cool variety. But like you said, you might find that certain hitters are, like you said, lefties. It was hard. No, righties. You threw your curveball too.
Lefties.
Lefties, yeah. Lefties, it was just a better pitch to throw his curveball. So it's really going to be based on circumstances. So that was good.
There are plenty of guys that are just bullpen guys that will come in, whether you're a lefty specialist or, they don't really call it righty specialist, but a guy with a great right-handed curveball or slider, and they only have 2 pitches, a fastball and that breaking ball. Why? Because they only face the guys that are their arm side. So, like I said, you can make a career off of throwing both pitches. Just depends on the situation that you're in, the hitter you're facing, the pitches that you've thrown before, all that stuff.
Same time too, if I'm out there trying to figure out what I'm going to use for a season and I'm throwing a changeup and a curveball, and my curveball's 50 times better than my changeup, I'm just going to throw my curveball.
Yeah.
It's really also based on what works, what you're throwing well.
Yeah. That's why I said I'm going to try to answer your question, but there's no there's no one answer to that question. There's many ways you can go at it.
Like David Ardsma is telling us that he's really liking his curveball now, which he didn't throw a curveball last year. So here he goes. Now he's throwing a new pitch. So it's really what you feel comfortable with, what's working, but there's a lot of variety in the changeup. That's basically what I'm saying. All right, good question. If you have another question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, @TopVelocity, #pitching tips, #baseball tips. Ask your question, answer on the show. Come down 3X Velocity camps, 2X camps coming up. Get ready this spring. We've got them coming through the spring, and then the summer's going to be big. So try to book that early because summers fill up quick. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah. Hold on.